different ways. Even people I do like, we have different approaches. We have different job titles and descriptions. I will say Marnie is one of my favorite people in this market. She's a great person. She's good at what she does. She does her homework. She's good on the air. She's fun to be around. I'm really happy for her.
And you know what she has? And this is hard for a woman. She's likable. She's likable.
I'll leave that one alone.
Jim, how was your vacation? Let's talk about that.
You know what? I've taken
the heavy side. Well, you're not supposed to heavy side.
Well, the thing is, I've
vacation.
been living in this market for 28 years now, almost 29 years.
And you're ready to go back, right?
29 years.
Another snowfall.
And I'm used to winter, and I've adapted. And I get to travel in the winter. I'm very privileged. I get to travel in the winter, whether it's personal or business. This is a trip, though, where I went down there just for a quick vacation, sat on the beach, got sunburned, drank stuff I shouldn't have drank, and came back. And I have to admit, I came back and I'm like, oh my God. And I don't like complaining about weather because it's a cliche. But I got to admit, this is the one time I came back and I said, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's getting to the point now where I'm the same way. I'm not a weather person. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. But you do get to a point where you're saying, make it stop. Last night, I literally went on the Farmer's Almanac to see what was in store for us in March because I keep feeling like, okay, this is the last snowfall. Sunshine and warmth is just around the corner. Don't look at the March Farmer's Almanac, Jim. It's depressing. So hopefully,
and you know what? I think it's affecting my dog, and the fact that it's affecting my dog is affecting me. Because my dog's a very, he's a French bulldog. He's a blast, and he's got a great personality. And
needs exercise.
He's just sitting inside whining all the time now, and I'm like, but I'm not going to take you out when it's 0 degrees.
Right. Right. Because you don't want to go out. You're concerned about his paws.
Him, actually. His paws. I'm just going to put on the same thing I put on whether it's 0 or 30. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I'm concerned for his moods.
Yeah. That's tough.
But again, I'm privileged. I get to travel out during the winter, so I can't complain.
You can take him with you. Take the French bulldog
with you. I would love to take him with me. I'd love to take him everywhere I go. He's a blast. Let's get to some very good Twitter questions. We do want to thank Shelly Bean, the Sports Queen Sportsbook. Shelly Boyan Breen is the author, a friend of the program. She comes out to the live shows. We hope to be setting up a new live venue for all the people who did such a great job filling up our former venues. But let me tell you about Shelly Bean, the Sports Queen. It's a book series aimed at ages 4 through 9 about a tough little girl who loves to learn new sports. It isn't easy for her, but every time she gets back up and tries again, she demonstrates the perseverance that you need, whether you're a girl or a boy, and go to the end of each story, and she reflects on her day and what she's accomplished and rewards herself by making a new sports charm for her crown. Book reviewer Rebecca Flansburgh said, I love the representation of diversity in this picture book that will appeal to both boys and girls. Friends like Parisa, who swims in her hijab swimsuit, and Mason, who uses a wheelchair on dry land but can swim like a fish in the water. So use the promo code. Go to ShellyBeanTheSportsQueen.com. Use the code LynxCoachReeve at checkout and save 15% off the cover price. Check out the new 5-pack, the Shelly Bean poster, become a member of the fan club, and much more. Again, ShellyBeanTheSportsQueen.com/LynxCoachReeve. Some good Twitter questions today from Blake Dubonis. I didn't want to screw it up because I like Blake, and I'm so bad with pronunciations. I'm such a print, no matter how much other media I do, I'm still a print person at heart. And so in my head, if I know how to spell it, I'm done.
Right.
And then I'll be about to say something in a microphone. I'm like, I'm about to screw this up.
Now, mind you, I just said that's my opinion how you say it. I don't really know how you say it.
We're going to go with it. Blake, you're going to have to adapt, man. How, if at all, has losing an assistant coach in the offseason affected your scouting for the upcoming draft?
Not at all, actually. Our scouting has largely, in the past been go back to the years where Jim Peterson was an assistant coach. Jim was with the Wolves the entire offseason and did not do much scouting until, nearing the draft. I would send him, maybe 10 players to take a look at, but he very rarely saw anything in person. So it was always myself and Shelly Patterson that would do the scouting, and I would take on the bulk of it. I would say that the area of scouting has improved, not necessarily because we lost an assistant, but even if you look at where James as an assistant coach was in Europe. So I really didn't have that position in person. So now what I have Shelly, myself, and Walt, and Claire, so the four of us are all being very involved in in-person evaluations. And so I would say that at this point it's probably the best that it's ever been in terms terms of the investment that we're making, obviously because our team's, in transition. And so, not to say that it wasn't important before, but we knew that picking in the bottom of the first or bottom of the second, bottom of the third, that there were real challenges for that player to be pivotal in our lineup. And so now we're picking sixth. We have 3 second-round picks, and so it's all hands on deck. And I'd say that we have a very, very good handle on the draft.
So one of these days I want to talk about Shelly, maybe a week when there isn't so much news, but she's like the one person of your front office and coaching staff I've really never gotten to know. I'd just like to hear more about her. I bet
that's just how Shelly is. Shelly's just so low key and doesn't want the attention, just wants to work. And, she's a legend in our league. She's been around since, I think 99, 2000 with the Houston Comets. And, so she's, more experienced than myself. And I always make sure that I tell her that.
So nice. From Krupp on Twitter. What is the vibe with the returning core players, Simone, Sill, and Brunson, after the Maya news? Are they planning for the prospect of Maya not returning for the 2020 season as well?
I would say overall, this was not a surprise to them. So there's not necessarily a reaction to the news. It's more for people outside the organization. So this isn't something that came as a surprise to them. And I would say there's not necessarily a mood one way or the other. I can tell you that Simone and Sill in particular are two people that are going to take on the challenge of some of the change, without a Lindsay or without a Maya, and maybe without a Rebecca Brunson. They're eager to show that you better not count them out, and that's great news for me.
From Luke Braun, without Whalen and Maya, who's the face of the franchise?
Well, that's an interesting question because, I think that's sort of subjective in terms of who has been the face of the franchise. We have so many, stars, if you will, that I could see if somebody were to say that it was Lindsay or Maya or Sill or some at any point in time because that's just, the nature of the team that we've had.
And it might have been Simone when you won your first one.
Well, and I've said if you look at, and these are subtle things that maybe aren't recognizable to the outside, but they're very careful decisions that we've made. Simone is and has been and always will be, as long as she's here, the face of our franchise. We've had many faces of the franchise, and so I think along with Simone, I would say that I will lean heavily on Sill to be the face of the franchise. So it's kind of a two-headed monster, if you will. But Simone, we've been very, very careful with, I think externally, maybe when we traded for Lindsay. There's obviously the hometown feel. When we drafted Maya, there's that, that superstar feel. But we have always made sure that Simone knows where she stands with us. Something as simple and subtle as, if you look at our introductions, the order of the players being announced is something it's strategic. And Simone continues to be the last player we introduce, even with Maya, even with Lindsay Whalen. And so that's kind of been the message that, Simone is incredibly valuable, has been incredibly loyal to the franchise, and has always been one of the faces and will continue to be.
That's a way more detailed answer than I expected. I mean, you just give it. That's really interesting. I have to write about that at some point because that's pretty fascinating. From you, Lynn, can the Lynx play in the NBA instead of the Wolves? I don't think that's going to happen, but thank you for the sentiment. From High Post Hoops, which does very good work, what is the single biggest achievable goal that the league should get out of CBA talks? And the same question for the player side.
Well, the difficulty here is, as many know that listen to the show, I certainly have a lot of thoughts and opinions around that. I'm just not able to talk about, both sides, what we should get out of it on the organizational side and what you should do from a player side. I can only tell you that the negotiations would be much simpler if we had greater investment in our league, because I think what the players are after simply takes a bigger investment. And I think there's not I don't think there's an owner that doesn't want to do better for the players. I know certainly at the WNBA league level, I can't speak to the NBA, but the WNBA, Lisa Borders as the past president, we would talk about this. She would love to pay, women, more. If that was a simple thing, then we would do it. We need greater investment, not only by the league, we need greater investment by corporations. And I think that's something that we need to take better note of, is who are the corporations that are investing in women, not just women in sport, but all across the board. And so every time I see something like, recently, Black Girls Code. There's a list of corporations that were supporting the organization. So women, people of color, we have to see a greater investment. We're not thought of in many circles, and that needs to change. It's always about men, whether it's men's sports, it's naming rights, millions of dollars to put their name on a stadium. We need to be thought of differently. And again, that's an arena that when I've talked to people, even women that are decision makers, I was at the NFL, at the Super Bowl, and I was at a group of women leaders, and we talked about, getting more involved in the WNBA, and women said, gosh, I didn't think of that. And so that whole narrative, it just goes to show you that you're conditioned to feel a certain way, especially at the corporate level. There's money to be had. I think it would be a great investment, and I think that would solve a lot of the problems that maybe exist in the CBA. And then you could narrow it down to, negotiating, free agency, the length of free agency, or whatever it is that you go through as players. But right now, the bigger picture is we need a greater investment so we can solve some of these problems.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to divide up a lot of money than to figure out how to parse a small amount of money.
That's exactly right.
From MJ, our friend, Coach, sincere thanks for allowing the repurposing of your tough coach, upset coach moment. And thanks to Dawn at Fox, another friend of the program, Dawn Mitchell, for the interview segment. Powerful message with appreciation. Mary, thanks, Mary. Another one from High Post Hoops. If the CBA is off limits for you, best memory with Prowl and where Prowl ranks among the mascots in the league and why?
Well, there's no question that Prowl's the best mascot in the league. I think you guys know the answer to that. I like Prowl's personality, but I think the best moment for me was probably with my son. I think, Oliver's one of those kids. I know it's hit or miss with kids when it comes to mascots, and Ollie adores all mascots, but Prowl's one of his favorites, so the moments with him are my favorites.
Pat Barrett didn't really phrase it as a question, but said, more time scouting U.S. college or international for players, diamonds in the rough, a la Popovich. I guess, I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's a question or suggestion, but
the answer, yes.
So I guess the way to ask a question based on that is, how much international scouting do you do, and do you think you do more than others?
Well, I think because I'm exposed through the women's national team, competing abroad, I have the opportunity to, scout other teams, see them live. And so the World Cup experience is one, that gets you a little more in tune to the international prospects. I think the challenge with truly international prospects is the every other year or every year, there being some competition that they're going to be pulled back for. So you really can't build your team on European prospects. It's different than the NBA. And they feel strongly about those moments with their national team, which I certainly understand, but it makes it very difficult for us. So, I would say that the international scouting is probably more of WNBA players that are competing overseas. And so in free agency, you would keep an eye on players. We do that all the time. Maybe players that are not currently in the league that maybe were drafted years ago, or, like a Kelsey Griffin that you keep an eye on all those players because you're waiting for that next up and coming player. Great example would be Ivani Turner, for Phoenix, player that would come every year and get cut. Matter of fact, also a Nebraska grad, come every year and get cut. And then finally found her spot and has matured so much and has become an important player for the Phoenix Mercury. So we're all looking for that next Ivani Turner.
One more question for Cheryl. Thanks again to Shelly being the sportsqueen.com sportsbooks and successfulmarketinggroup.com. Thanks also to our producer, Brandon Morton. We'll be back next week with another show. I'm curious about this. How does the Nike ad come about? Do they have to ask you or the Lynx for permission for that clip? Do you get any benefit from being a part of that commercial?
No, my understanding, Nike and the WNBA, I know that they work closely. Obviously, I'm sure that, the other components that are non-WNBA that are in that ad, I'm sure Nike was in communication with all those elements. And then I think the ad was virtually produced. And then it was like, hey, Cheryl, you're, is it okay if we use this piece? And I quickly reviewed it, and like I said, the message was on point, and I said absolutely. And I know for Sue and Diana, the same thing. Sue talked about that on an interview in the Denver game recently. That picked up the phone and said, "Hey, what do you think about using these moments where Sue was upset and ripped off her mask?" Now, the funny thing is, Sue's not highly emotional, so it caught her in one of her. This was a very important time, obviously, to go to the finals, and and I think, the same thing for Diana. And so I think we all want to be a part of that great message that empowers women. And it was an easy decision to say yes.
Great stuff from Cheryl, as always. Thanks to everyone who listens and everyone who sent in questions. We do appreciate it. Whenever you do so, we will